Hey folks, this is Curtis Brown, your instructor for HSEP302. Sorry for the delay for posting this week's video, but things happen, you have to adjust. In addition to this video, I'm going to post a video with Donna Pletch, one of my colleagues here at the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, has a lot of good experience in emergency planning, including managing the Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan. That video is about 10 to 11 minutes, and some of the information from that video will be on the quiz that I'm about to post as well. So please check that out. It's a good resource, and you can hear directly from a professional about the challenges and the difficulties of emergency planning and what capabilities and skill sets are needed to actually be an emergency manager and conduct quality planning for all hazards. Just to recap, last week was week 4 in the semester so far. We're moving right along. After focusing on vulnerabilities and threats, we're now focusing on preparedness and emergency planning. This is the phase out of the 4 phases of emergency management. This is preparedness, and so that's where you find the need to plan. You plan for the threats and hazards and vulnerabilities that we identified in weeks 1 through 3. And so the discussion board question I asked you was to describe some of the key concepts of emergency planning in your own words. What are the tools emergency managers use? Developing emergency management plans, emergency preparedness plans. Why is emergency planning essential to all hazards preparedness? And what are some of the challenges that emergency managers face? And so I just wanted to get your opinion based on the reading so far and understanding the threats and hazards, but also now understanding what emergency planning is about, what you felt like were some of the core concepts and challenges. And many of you all hit the answer out of the park. You understood that emergency planning is important for identifying a strategic approach to leveraging all the capabilities and skill sets within a jurisdiction or a business or a state or actually across the country to leverage those to deal with an emergency. And so the challenge that emergency managers face is that information and threats are constantly changing. And so you always have to adjust your planning. When you check out the video from Donna Pletch, she mentions that after an event occurs, an emergency managers do what is called an after-action review. AAR is the acronym. And that AAR identifies the good, the bad, the ugly, things that went right and things that went wrong. And for the things that went wrong, usually it changes the way in which we approach planning when we update the plan. There's new scenarios or new threats that we now have to plan for. I'll probably say before 9/11, a lot of people did not recognize the threat of airplanes being used as terrorist devices, attacking buildings. And so once new threats are identified, nowadays people are using vehicles to ram people on the street. So now you have concrete barriers up on sidewalks and protecting buildings. So once the threats and hazards evolve and their impacts evolve, we have to change our planning. So that is one of the key challenges facing emergency managers, adapting as much as possible to the changing threats and hazards and making sure our plans reflect that. The tools that emergency managers use, the CPG 101 guidance is an essential tool for structuring and developing a plan. That helps to guide the development of the emergency operation plan, the EOP. Some of the core concepts is the whole of community concept. Whole of community means we leverage all our capabilities and assets, whether on the federal, state, local, nonprofit, private, or individual level. Individuals have a role to play in preparedness. But it also conceptually says that we have to recognize the communities in which we do emergency planning in. We have people who are disabled, whether blind or cognitive. We have a lot of senior assisted living facilities. And so when we talk about the whole of community approach, we have to be inclusive in the way in which we understand our challenges and the population we face. We cannot just assume that folks can evacuate on their own. They might not have the means to do so, whether as it relates to a disability or they don't have the financial resources. So when you're an emergency manager, you got to think comprehensively, inclusively, using data and statistics, and understanding the people and population that you serve, and then identifying where the major gaps exist and where you should target your resources for emergency response. So again, these are just the skill sets and the concepts that have to be in place when you're an emergency manager. This week, we continue on in preparedness planning, and the readings focus on continuing to read CPG 101, Chapter 3 and 4, and we also are introduced to the Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan. Working here at the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, I say that the Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan is essential to how we respond to a host of threats, many of them natural disasters. Last year, as I mentioned previously, was one of our worst years in the state in terms of disasters. We had two major hurricanes, Hurricane Michael and Hurricane Florence, several other tornadoes, and a couple of large winter events. Of course, we were in Charlottesville again for a civil disturbance. And in any of those instances, we leveraged the Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan to guide how we leverage all our assets and all of the responsibilities of our state agencies. They are within each of those emergency support functions. There's a lead agency, there are supporting agencies, and they clearly identify their roles and responsibilities and what they bring to the table. Here at the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, we coordinate all of those different entities and in order to make sure that people are collaborating and that we focus on the mission of decreasing the loss of life and returning everything back to normal as quickly as possible. So the Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan, please look over the structure, compare it to the CPG 101 guidance. Donna Pletch mentions it in my interview with her that I'll post here with this video, and just check out to see the correlation between how we approach emergency management planning in Virginia with the guidance. And I think you'll see that we use a lot of the features in that. For the reading this week, the textbook reading, you continued on in the preparedness chapter. Last week, in the preparedness chapter, you talked about the preparedness cycle, planning, organization, equipment, training, exercise, evaluation, and improvement. And one of the things I just wanted to point out is that this is a continuous process of trying to get better, trying to improve, preparing for the next disaster. And so one of the things that we do in emergency management is we're constantly training, we're constantly exercising. Our exercising could be a tabletop where we just create a scenario and go over what we would do in case there was that type of disaster. Sometimes it's a functional or full-scale exercise where we actually pull out the equipment and test out the equipment and see how quickly we could get things done in terms of the response. I participated in full-scale exercises that actually had actors playing as if they were wounded or some dead, and you would have to leverage all of the different responders to see how you would approach that. Training exercise is a core component of emergency management. We all know that it's just the next moment or time that we'll deal with some type of tragedy, whether it's a plane crash, a terrorist attack, or a natural disaster. So that is a real important part of everything that we do. And again, CPG 101 is a planning guidance tool. If you look at it, the whole document, it focuses on ensuring that emergency managers understand both the threats that are out there and the capabilities that they have, that those capabilities are trained and tested and exercised, and that is a continuous process. So all of this works together. It's a lot of information, but it actually all works together. And as the emergency manager, you're responsible for kind of making sure that all the different players come together. So check out CPG 101, Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan. You'll see both of those in the quiz, but more importantly in the midterm and the final. For those of y'all interested in emergency management and Homeland Security, this is a key component of the work that you will be doing, planning for different scenarios and making sure that assets and capabilities and the staff that you'll be working with, your partners, understand the threat and the risk, and that a cohesive plan has come together to be able to respond. There's a 10 question quiz. Should be pretty simple if you've done the reading and watched the video from Donna Pletch. We'll get back to discussion board questions next week. I will be giving some insight on your discussion board posts to make sure that they're thorough so you can get full credit. We're getting closer to the midpoint of the semester, actually, and so I'll continue to give guidance on what you can expect on the midterm in a couple of weeks. Feel free to ask me any questions, and hope everyone's having a good day. Talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.